Jeff, welcome back on the show, man. How's it going?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me on the show again. This is always fun.
Oh, of course. I think, man, from our previous episodes that we've done for those listening and watching, Jeff actually was on episode 52, where we talked about financial wellness and coaching, and we even did a Clubhouse episode where we talked about the psychology of personal finance. So we've definitely had some great conversations, and what we want to do with today's show is really give you all some tangible steps on how you can start to implement principles to help you with approaching your finances. So we're really going to detail more specifically with budgeting, what exactly does budgeting look like, and how you can analyze a financial statement. Because a lot of times when it comes to these behaviors and habits of just sound fundamentals when it comes to your personal finances, being able to read a financial statement and being able to put one together for yourself, such as a balance sheet and an income statement, that's everything that we're going to talk about, and just really going into just balancing, paying off debt, saving, and investing. So I just want to tell everyone, continue, if you're watching on a YouTube channel, continue to like, subscribe, and share. It definitely is appreciated. And if you're listening on the podcast, rate, leave a review, and also subscribe to any audio platform that you're listening to. So, Jeff, before we really start to break down the financial statements, for those that may be listening and hearing about you for the first time, if you don't mind just kind of giving a brief overview of your background and where you're from, and just a little of your experiences with the financial planning world.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so Kevin, as you know, we went to Bowling Green State University together, and back there, I majored in finance. So that's why I initially just fell in love with all things finance, personal finance, and economics and things like that. So I've been in the financial services space for about, I would say, maybe 4 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I am a financial coach. And in my financial coaching roles, I work with individuals one-on-one, and I really just help them to reach their life goals through personal financial guidance. So, I'm really there to kind of help them just stay motivated, stay on top of changing certain behaviors and things like that, but then also providing them with education. So that's pretty much what my passion is. And, I'm always trying to learn and grow in this area so that I can continue to help people.
Yes. Now, you have spoken before about how a budget is the most important when it comes to a financial plan. That's really like the beginning starting point as you start to learn about personal finance and being able to monitor and control your expenses. Can you talk about, based on your experiences, why it's the most important with a financial plan, and also perhaps why someone should get comfortable with filling out like an income statement where they can look at their income and their revenue and their expenses?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, Kevin, budgeting is like the foundation to me of having a solid financial plan. Another word we may use is cash flow planning. But if we don't know how we're going to spend our dollars, then it's really tough for us to kind of get the ball rolling on the other aspects of our financial plan, such as retirement planning, or how much can we set aside to invest, or how much house can we afford, what kind of car can I purchase, can I meet these long-term savings goals that I have. And if we don't really have that foundation put in place, as far as, all right, this is where my spending dollars are going. If we don't have that budget, then it is very, very, very tough to kind of proceed with the rest of your financial plan. So, yeah, the more you can, assess how much money you have coming in every paycheck, or also assess maybe, what you're getting from your other side hustles or your other investments on a monthly basis, the more you can get ahead of that and really have a plan, a strategic plan for where you want that money to go. And that money can also go to fun places as well. I feel like people hear budgeting and it's like, oh, you know, I can't have fun. Jeff is telling me I can't spend my money, and that's not at all what I'm trying to say. You can for sure enjoy your money, and having a spending plan does not or should not prevent you from enjoying that money. So yeah, it's critically important.
Yes, I think, that's one of the misconceptions when people hear budgeting. They think that it's not allowing them to do what they want to do. But I look at budgeting as more of like a safeguard. It allows you to be able to identify some patterns or trends where you may be overspending in certain categories, and being able to identify areas where you can potentially cut back. I think with any type of financial plan, it comes with sacrifices. And with budgeting, you can have fun and you can do the things that you want to do, but it's always good to have those safeguards, those things in place that can kind of be able to monitor and control your spending for the better, so you can be able to accomplish whether it's saving more or being able to invest in the market. So, I think is vitally important. And actually, for those watching on the YouTube, we're going to actually walk you through what an actual budget spreadsheet looks like. And for those on the podcast, we'll kind of explain it. But for those listening on that platform, if you go to my YouTube channel, we'll definitely show you this step by step. And I'll make sure to put all of these different spreadsheets in the show notes so you all can be able to download it and start to focus on your budget plan. So did you kind of want to walk through this, Jeff, as far as like how this kind of looks from a visual standpoint when someone is actually putting together a budget?
Yeah, yeah. So the two key components of any budget or spending plan are your income and expenses. So you want to know, hey, what are all of my income sources? Is it just one main job that I have, which is probably what most people have? Is it my main job and a side hustle, or two side hustles? Do I have rental income coming in from a real estate investment? So you really want to know, hey, where are all of my dollars coming from? And then once you do that's that big first step. So figuring out where all your money is coming from.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that as you all can see here as well, what Jeff is saying is essentially you're wanting to look at your cash flow. So you want to know what's coming in, and then you have your net spendable income, where let's say you put money away for like your savings, charitable donations, investments, and typically you'll have a net spendable income category, as you can see here, with the $4,376. And then as you continue to work alongside your expenses, you get what's called your net income. And it's simply all your net income is you're taking your revenue minus your expenses, and then that gives you that final total. And this is a great way for you to see, how much more money do I have that I can potentially, put towards debt, or being able to beef up my emergency fund, or being able to budget for any type of item that you want to buy. So I just think it's a great way for you to kind of keep yourself organized and being able to really be precise on where your money's coming in and how it's going out. So one of the other things that I really wanted to talk about is, how do you think about controlling like fixed and variable expenses? Kind of explain the difference between the two, because I think sometimes, people may not really understand like what a variable or a fixed expense is. But when it comes to budgeting, how do you think about that when it comes to as far as being able to monitor and budget with those two particular type of, expenses?
Yeah, yeah. So your fixed expenses are those expenses that don't change from month to month. Car note, maybe a minimum payment on your student loans, rent, things like that. And then your variable expenses are going to be those expenses that you have every single month. However, that dollar amount may change from month to month. So one of the things that I did recently that really, really helps me with managing those fixed and variable expenses is I have accounts, checking accounts for like those different expenses. So I have one checking account where it's literally my fixed expense account. It's my bill account. So I know that anything from my paycheck that gets dispersed to that account, that's money for the bills. That money is going to be getting automatically withdrawn from my account periodically throughout the month. Random bills are just going to come out. So that's almost money that I don't even think about touching. It's like, oh, that's my bill account. Like that thing will change throughout the month. Those are just the bill collectors getting that change. But then I also have an account that is just for my variable expenses that I spend on, every couple of weeks or, every month, obviously. But so my checking variable account, that's where my haircut money goes. That's where the grocery shopping money goes, entertainment, anything, clothes, shopping, anything you could think of in that, gas money. So anything that goes to that account, I know that's my spending cash for the next 2 weeks until I get paid again. So that really, really helps me out. And then as far as I get questions about, hey, is the bill a variable expense or is it a fixed expense if it kind of fluctuates? And I tell people, that's really up to you at the end of the day. So for me personally, I like to treat it like a fixed expense. So let's say I have my gas bill and during the winter months, it's $100. And then during the summer months, it's $60. So, one thing that I like to do is I just like to kind of personally keep it at that $100 mark in my personal budgeting plan. And, of course, it fluctuates between that 60 and 100, sometimes less, sometimes more. But I try to keep it at a range that, all right, like, I know it shouldn't go over this amount. And I want to keep that as a steady amount in my budget so that I am always prepared if it, is a little bit more than I thought it was. I was conservative with my estimate there. So that really helps me out. And then in the summertime when my bills are less, when a gas bill is less than what it is in the wintertime. So if I'm used to paying $100 in the wintertime, then it drops to $60 in the summer months. You can adjust it for those summer months if you want to in your overall budget. But for me, I just like to, if I have to spend only $60 on it instead of $100, I just, I see I have the $40 left over and I just use it for something else. I spend it, save it, or whatever. But I like to keep my numbers conservative with my budgeting approach.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, I've heard that method before with keeping separate checking accounts, especially for bills that are fixed and variable, because kind of when it's all commingled together, sometimes you may not be able to identify certain things that may be a pattern of problematic spending or things that you need to really identify and look at making a correction with. So, I think that's wise that you keep them separate to keep yourself organized. And then when you do have the fixed expenses that fluctuate, you pretty much keep it at a certain conservative. You're not really changing it too much. And I actually have that same approach too, even with my electric. If I see that it fluctuates, I usually keep it at I keep my budget for that category at a price where I know that for most of the time out of those 12 months in a year, that's what I'm spending. So even if it's some months it's down lower, just take the difference and, save and hold it for the next month. So that's kind of some of the things that I'll do. But, that's definitely a great approach when it comes to budgeting. Now, I wanted to get your perspective on like a balance sheet. I think also, the budgeting, using that income statement, being able to identify those fixed and variable expenses, understanding your cash flow is important. But I also would say with having an understanding of your balance sheet, which is another financial statement, is something that every person that is working on their finances should understand. Can you kind of talk on that about, the balance sheet and exactly what that is? What exactly is being disclosed when a person is filling out a balance sheet?
Yeah, yeah. So when if we have a client fill out a balance sheet, typically we're filling out that balance sheet so that we can get a view of what their net worth is. So we'll have them list out the balance sheets is your assets and liabilities. Your assets are what you own. Your liabilities are what you owe. So clients will list out everything they own. So all the money in their checking account, savings account, any home, the value of their home, the value of, any personal items that they have, if it's practical to list that. But yeah, it's essentially everything that you own is on the asset side. Then on the liability side is everything that you owe. So what's the balance left on your mortgage? What's the balance left on your student loans? What's the balance left on your auto loans? And then after we list out what all of our assets, what we own, and what all of our liabilities, what we owe, once we list those things out, we subtract our liabilities from our assets. Then our assets minus our liabilities give us our net worth. So that lets us know essentially how much money we have on the books, pretty much how much are we worth. So, you want to see that number increase over time, and that's a good indicator that your financial health is improving, seeing that number kind of increase over time, but you definitely shouldn't be discouraged if, it's lower, especially if you're younger, because a lot of people have negative net worths graduating college and things like that, and just with the massive student loan debt numbers that are out there. But it's definitely a good thing to know, all right, what is my net worth? Is it positive? Is it negative? Because that's a really good indicator of your financial health, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a great indicator. It really, shows, like you said, where you're at as far as your financial health. What if you have too many liabilities in comparison to your assets, and like you said, you ideally just want to see that it's increasing over time, and that's really the best way to be able to approach that standpoint. So what Jeff is saying, this is a great way on how you can put together a balance sheet. So you're going to take all of your assets, so retirement accounts, equity investments, you may have a business, you may have stocks, commodities, bonds, whatever it is. You want to track what you're doing year over year, because being able to track what you're doing year over year gives you a great indicator on if you're making progress or if you're regressing. So kind of like what you can see in this first category, simply the way I'm getting this annual percentage increase is I'm taking the 75,000, I'm minusing it by my 50,000, and then I'm dividing it by 75,000. So you get your annual increase, and then it's good to take your current total. Always look at what your current, market worth is, or what the value of what the portfolio is. So that way you can see year to date, if it's a positive net number or if it's a negative number. And then you can put your cash and savings on your assets, of course, like life insurance. If you have any whole life policies that have cash value, certainly that is an asset. Of course, real estate. And then with the liabilities, you want to really point out those liabilities, and you want to see what are some things that you can do to get rid of those liabilities. But like Jeff said, it's nothing wrong with if you look at it, your net worth, and you see that, you have a negative net worth because you're dealing with student loans. Typically, that's a reality for a lot of people that are listening to this show. So definitely don't get discouraged about that. But the balance sheet is a way where you can identify how you can get better and how you can be able to have a positive net worth so you can be able to improve your financial situation. And then simply at the end, you see your net worth, kind of like what me and Jeff are saying, and you're just taking that assets minus that liability. So it's really a great way to be able to identify where you're at financially. Now, the next thing that I really wanted to talk about is, as people are, building an emergency fund, we've talked about the importance of, budgeting, and then paying off debt and investing. What have you seen that is best as far as finding a balance? I think the biggest challenge is as people are starting to understand these principles of personal finance. It's often when you get paid, you're trying to figure out, okay, how much goes to saving, how much goes to investing, how much goes to paying down debt. And I wanted to get your perspective on that. Like when you're talking with clients, when you're going through financial coaching, what are some strategies that you've seen that have worked when it comes to that balance?
No. It's tricky. Sometimes I tell people, we talked about this before, Kevin. Sometimes I tell people, think about focusing on one thing at a time. So maybe right now it's time to hit the emergency fund. Then we knock out the debt. Now we have all this big old huge shovel to put towards our retirement accounts and invest. Well, sometimes you're working with someone who maybe doesn't have time to like put off investing for a couple of years. So we may need to do all three at once. And in that scenario, it's really just about figuring out what your appropriate percentages need to be. So, for instance, like, if I was speaking with someone who wanted to do all three and they were around my age, I would tell them, okay, like maybe you think about 10 to 13% for your retirement. And then, if you have additional funds left over, then maybe we add that to, our emergency fund. Or, a lot of this stuff also depends on how quickly you can hit these goals. So if you tell me, hey, Jeff, I can hit my emergency fund goal in 6 months, then I might tell you, all right, well, like, forget the other stuff. Like, let's go super hard. But if it's going to take you a while, you kind of want to divvy it up appropriately in that scenario. But, it really depends. But you just want to make sure you're hitting those percentages. I've heard like the 50, 30, 20 rule before. 50 goes to your needs, 30 goes to your wants, and then 20% goes towards everything else. And that everything else includes savings and paying off debt. So that's an approach that some people can utilize, but it really depends on, a couple of different factors as well.
I think with the percentages, it's all really subjective. It really depends on where you're at financially and if what your journey is when it comes to being able to pay off debt, being able to save, because, kind of things that I have done is I really like your approach of focusing on one thing at a time. So I think like a person can start off with that emergency fund. I think that's a big point of emphasis because you want to have peace of mind when it comes to financial security. And if you don't have peace of mind, you're pretty much are just going to be, all over the place when it comes to trying to do a multitude of different things at one time. So I think having that peace of mind from the jump, having that emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses, like we said, or even having, let's say, $1,000 of an emergency fund. And then, okay, I'm going to put a plan together. I'm going to get rid of my auto loan debt, and then I'm going to put 15% away for retirement. That's kind of an example of things that you can do. And then as you're starting to invest more, you can start to beef up your emergency fund. But I think that emergency fund, having that foundation and getting rid of all bad debt from the jump is going to prevent a lot of stuff from happening where you'll have more to invest, so, identify areas that's costing you the most with your debt, because that also plays a vital role when it comes to balancing between all of these different categories. Because if you have interest rate on a credit card that's charging you 19%, you might want to put a big emphasis on getting that out the way and getting it paid off. So, I think that you're hitting on a lot of good points. So as people, we've talked about budgeting, we've talked about the financial statements, the emergency fund, and having that balance. As people start to progress from those different perspectives, how does it look when it comes to preparing for retirement? What are some strategies that you've done to kind of just plan for the long term?
Yeah, yeah. There are like little quick calculations you can do to kind of figure
Mm-hmm.
out like what you think, just to kind of have an idea of what you want to have in retirement. There are some more
Mm-hmm.
complicated calculations that I do sometimes to figure out what that specific number is. But
Mm-hmm.
um, really, Kevin, it's really just about starting as early as you can. And,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to stay on this part too long, but, like I was always like, okay, like save for retirement, like IRA, 401k, take advantage of those things. And I really think you should. But the reason, I didn't do my focusing technique. I wasn't focused on one thing. I was doing a lot of things at one time. And I'm not trying to critique that method as a whole. But, what I was doing, I didn't put enough emphasis on my emergency fund first. So I was like, all right, I just want to get this tax advantage money going and I want to get this compounding interest. And then all of a sudden, like an emergency hits. And now you're like, oh, wow, like I was putting everything away in my retirement accounts. It's all tied up in retirement accounts. I don't want to touch that money because I get penalized and I pay taxes on that stuff. But I didn't fund my emergency fund fully like I wanted to. And now I'm in a bad predicament. So that's just my own personal experience. But as far as hitting those retirement goals, running numbers, figuring out, what. First of all, you want to know, what do you realistically think you can? What do you want your salary to be in retirement? Like a realistic salary. What do you want that to be? You have to factor in things like maybe you don't have a mortgage at that time in your life. Maybe healthcare expenses are higher by the time you retire. Maybe taxes are higher, but you want to have a somewhat idea of what's the number that I think I can comfortably live on in retirement. And eventually you do these complicated calculations where you adjust that for inflation and things like that. But I would say that's a good start for most people, just really thinking about it. But then also,
Yeah.
you have to really think about serving your future self well. I was literally watching a show today about the retirement crisis that we have here in America. And they were saying how, for like, psychologically, people just really have a tough time caring about like the future. Like we're just so caught up in the now, and it's just it's a stumbling block to consider that, hey, one day you're going to be, 65, 70, and you want to go, you're potentially going to want to think about stop working, retiring. And it's just important that you really have deep insight and that you really think about the idea that, hey, how can I serve future Jeff, or how can I serve future Kevin? Because, I won't be this young forever. And not enough people do that, I think.
Yeah, the retirement crisis is real, man. And I think that we have to have a more emphasis on, like you said, our future self. I think we just get caught up in the day to day. All of that is really distractions. We gotta always have that foresight of, we know that we're going to need to be able to support ourselves when it's all said and done. And I'm sure not, to those listening and watching, we don't want to be working forever. So you have to have a proper plan in place to be able to prepare for that, and I think, I actually, Barron's, I was reading some article, and they were talking about that the same thing that you're saying, that how, a lot of people, they have a hard time connecting with their future self. And one way that you can help with that is you have to create some type of emotional connection. So one piece of advice that they actually gave in the article was that there was a financial advisor that talked about how when they worked with clients, what they do is they use this app called the Face app, and it basically scans their face and it shows how they're going to look when they turn 65, 67 years old. And she uses that as an emotional connection at the beginning of the conversation to really stress that, okay, you see how you look. How do you want to feel when you get at this age? How much, money do you want put away for retirement when you get to this age? And I think it really allows you to reflect and understand that, we all are going to get to that point. And, time is the best thing that we have when it comes to being in the market. It's not about time in the market, but it's about the time that you're actually in the market. And I think that that's one of the strategies that I use. And, one thing that I actually just wanted to share is while we're talking about, retirement planning, is just the power of just compounding. Because in the book that you've read, and I have also read by Morgan Housley, with The Psychology of Money, he talks about, like with Warren Buffett, how he started investing at 11 years old, and that investing was his skill, but his secret was time. So I just want to make sure you can see my screen, Jeff.
Yep.
Okay. So the average annual total return for this is the Vanguard Total Index. I know you're big on the Vanguard funds, Jeff. I am as well, and this isn't a promotion for Vanguard. I just think Vanguard is a great company when it comes to index funds, but their market return is about 8%. So let's just say, from a compounding standpoint, if a person, let's say initially they put $1,000 in, and let's just say, 8% is the expected annual return. And let's just say you have a 30-year time horizon. Let me go back here. And let's just say you have a 30-year time horizon. And what I'm going to show you all is essentially how the power of compounding works and how it really benefits your favor by having a long time of your money being invested into the market. So estimated rate of return, we're going to go with 8%. We're going to say an initial deposit is $1,000. Let's say a person every month is contributing $300 on a monthly basis. And let's just say the investment time span is going to be 30 years. So I'm going to show you all exactly how this looks. So over a 30-year time period, if a person is putting that type of money in, they will have essentially almost $500,000, not quite there, but $461,108 if you simply put $1,000 into an index fund. You contribute $300, dollar cost averaging every single month, no matter what the market is doing, over a span of 30 years with an 8% expected rate of return. The power of compounding will allow you to make $461,108. So I show that to say that, like, what me and Jeff is saying is that when it comes to your retirement planning, starting early and being consistent and being disciplined is what's going to work in your favor. And it's what allow you to be able to really build wealth and have longevity. So, I think that as you go through budgeting, as you look at ways to paying down your debt, an emergency fund, having that long-term perspective is so vitally important. And I actually wanted to ask you, Jeff, like when it comes to like volatility, I think that that's another thing when it comes like with the market. A lot of times people don't want to invest because the uncertainty. We talk about everything going on right now with Russia, Ukraine, the geopolitical fight that we're in now. And you talk about inflation and just things with rate hikes, with interest rates possibly increasing with the Federal Reserve. Like, how do you approach market volatility, and like, what are those kind of words of encouragement for people that are actually having challenges with that? What are some kind of things that you do with dealing with volatility?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny, Kevin, because can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you
Okay.
good.
Yeah. No, it's funny
Yeah.
because you know, being kind of formally trained in like the finance space for years, I've been hearing like the market is going to have its ups and downs. Stay the course. Stay the course. So for me, what seems so like second nature, like I'm expecting markets to like be volatile, but over time kind of trend in the upward direction. So I'm expecting this, and I'm not like in a panic when crazy things happen, and maybe that's due to my age and knowing that I have a long time horizon. But you know, so maybe I take that for granted. But it's really, really important to just think about staying the course. And in Morgan Housel's book, he talks about it. He's like, hey, like if you almost look at drastic dips in the market as sort of your fee to play the game, then you won't be so like tempted to like make those rash decisions and sell everything and go to cash immediately when the market is tanking, and you sell at the bottom of the market and things like that and lock in those losses. So it's really important to just know that, hey, like investing is the long game, and you are going to see those dips. You're going to see those things, and it's important to just view that as, hey, this is the price to pay in the game. Like it's not, nothing's free, is what he says in the book. Nothing is free, and this is just think of this as your fee. So yeah, I think just staying the course, understanding that it's part of the game. Not and then Jack Bogle, one of my investing idols, man, he always says like, don't peak. Like, don't look at your retirement accounts if you can help it. Like, don't look at that stuff. Like, especially if you're investing for the long haul, don't look. And then when it's time for you to actually tap into that money, hopefully you're pleasantly surprised. But if you do what you said, like Kevin, just consistently put away money in those accounts over the years, allow that compounding to do its work, and don't peak like Jack Bogle says, like, you'll probably be in a better position than worrying about it all day and should I move this and should I time the market. And of course we've talked about this, and Morgan talks about it in the book, like that desire that humans have to make everything way more complex than it needs to be ends up costing us in the long run a lot of times.
Yeah, man. Someone once told me that volatility is the price of return, and I think is spot on, because it's the price that you're taking to be able to get a good return over a long time horizon, or a long period of being in the market. And like you said, if you can do as much as you can to not look at it and to not focus so much on trying to time the market, but really just having a long-term perspective, I mean, you're going to be fine. I also think like, diversification helps, especially in this type of climate. Just having, your assets into different categories, whether it's, maybe some small cap stocks, or either blue chip stocks, or looking at international markets, maybe some commodities, maybe focusing on some metals. When you have it spread in other areas, it allows you to kind of reduce that risk exposure. Like, what are your thoughts on that as far as diversification?
Yeah, no, you're right, man. That diversification is something that we can do to help us with that risk. It's sort of like insurance for our stock, for our portfolios. It's like portfolio insurance that diversification is. So no, it is definitely key. I'm a big supporter of diversifying if you can. So I think that helps you a lot in the long run as well.
Yeah, I agree. Well, yeah, man. As we're coming to a close, Like how can everyone like connect with you? Just learn more about what you're doing. Any of your social media outlets. How can the people listening and viewing it connect with you?
Yeah. So, I'm always, trying to interact on my LinkedIn. So you all can find me at Jeffrey Knight LinkedIn, um, financial wellness coach, Jeffrey Knight. You probably Google that and be able to link with me and connect. And then, and yeah, that's the best way to connect with me, I would say.
Of course, I'll definitely put Jeff's information in the show notes. And yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think everything that we're talking on is really building that foundation and putting the principles in place to be able to work towards financial freedom. You have to, make sure that you have those. You stay prepared, so you can be able to work towards your future self and what you want to become. So yeah, man, I really enjoyed this conversation, man. I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Absolutely, Kevin. It's always fun. Always fun.
Yes. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning into another episode, and take care.